Good evening. It is 5:30, so I will call this meeting to order. In the physical absence of our board president and our vice chair not being able to join us today, we'll start today by, I'll do a call for nominations for the election of a presiding officer to preside over this meeting. Jim?
I'd like to nominate Robin.
We have a nomination for Robin. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. Any other nominations? All in favor? Say aye.
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 Robin, you can take it.
Thank you. It sounds like Tracy is joining us through audio. Welcome, Tracy. Let's start the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everybody. I need to apologize for my voice. Apparently, it is now common to have a sinus infection after you have COVID, but I am not contagious, so we'll move forward with that. I will look for approval of the agenda. Jim?
I'd like to move approval of the agenda with the addition of the HR addendum that was located at our work location to be added to item 7B under the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay. Motion's on the floor. All in favor, please vote by saying yes.
Yes.
Any
Yes.
opposed? Any opposed? No. Motion carries. The next item is recognition of audience. We do have two members of the audience that have signed up to speak to the board tonight. I will read this statement. At this time, the board will hear comments from the public. We ask that each speaker who has signed up to address the board state their name and home school district for the record. Speakers must refrain from using this forum to criticize or complain about a specific employee or student by name. Vulgar or profane language will not be tolerated. The board is interested in your comments and will listen carefully, but is not obligated to respond to or debate issues in this forum. Should you desire a written response to a specific question, you may request it. This evening, each speaker will be allotted a maximum of 5 minutes. Upon conclusion of the allotted time, a chime will sound.
Hi. It's kind of nerve-wracking. No way. So I'm Alexa Vian. I've worked for South High for 7 years, and I work in. I've done grounds work and work out Trollwood doing event staffing and stuff in the summer. And I was encouraged to come to you this evening to let you know of a issue that I have had talked about for the 4 years I've worked summers, and that I am a year-round employee, but I get treated as a 9-month employee and then a 3-month employee. So in the summer, nothing goes to like, I don't know why I'm shaking, so sorry about that. Like nothing goes towards my North Dakota PERS. I don't get personal time. I'm sorry, I don't know why I'm emotional. I've been fighting this for 4 years. I don't get any PTO or anything like that, and I feel like I'm almost forced to look elsewhere for employment because I just don't feel like I'm valued as a year-round employee like I should be. So, I just would like for you to look at that.
Thank you so much, Alexa. No worries, no worries. We appreciate you. Thank you. Next speaker is Devin Stachinski. Good evening, Devin.
Good evening. Devin Stachinsky, HMR. I'm going to say I'm absolutely elated for Anne Marie to be back tonight. Because I have to request a record correction for the minutes from last meeting. It says that all I asked questions about was the check register, and I asked a lot more questions than that. So if that could be updated, that would be fantastic. I received a written response from Tracy in regards to the plurality of my questions, and it was sufficient. I just have a couple of follow-up questions surrounding those. In regards to the coding on the check register, if I perform an open records request for any of the line items in the check register, will a itemized receipt be able to be provided? A simple yes or no will suffice. I can go from there. As far as the planning committee adding in the Horace Mann Roosevelt stuff into the long-term plan, Tracy said it was appropriate for the planning committee to act and add that in between the two readings. I would disagree, because the intent of a first reading is to inform the public of everything that's going on. So if you are to make a major change like that, it would require by Roberts to go back to being a first reading. And you would have another first reading and then go from there to allow for public comment for all the new information. As far as the question about at South High, where the district changed the name of a student in Power School without the parents' knowledge, I did not ask about the student specifically, so I don't think FERPA applies here, as Tracy says, because I asked about district policy on whether the district deems it appropriate to change the name of a student in the computer system without the parents' knowledge. I didn't ask anything about the student specifically. I asked about district policy. And something else that got brought to my attention that was a real head scratcher. And this has to do with updating the language in the policies, specifically AP 5256, staff-student relations. In the school district action section, why is one of the actions not for the district to immediately notify authorities? It reads very much as though the district will look into it and basically try to keep it under wraps until they would need to involve authorities. But if there's gross misconduct between staff and a student, wouldn't you want to notify authorities also right away so that they can get their investigation underway? It's just how it reads. I don't know if it just needs some rewording or what the actual intent is. As it reads now, it reads that Fargo School District wants to investigate before fronting this information to authorities. Also, Greg, keep asking good questions. It's nice to see. Thank you.
Thank you, Devin. On to our next agenda item, and we have administrative policy updates. So I'll turn that over to Dr. Gandhi.
Thank you. On an annual basis, we update our administrative policies and we provide the board with an update of what we do in this board memo format. So I'm going to address a few things today, and I know that the boards have heard some of the things about the removal of some policies as well that I just want to be able to cover as well. First and foremost, just as a reminder to the board, we have several administrative policies that we utilize within our organization. Our process is that every summer we divide up a set, maybe 1/4 of those policies altogether on a rotation basis and give them to the appropriate department leads and or cabinet members to look at them, make the suggested changes, and then cabinet will review them and update them and then bring to the board. So today might be me playing a little bit of a point guard if there's questions regarding a specific policy that I might point to the appropriate cabinet member to be able to handle those questions as well. Uh, we do make sure that all of our policies now, or at least we started this a couple years ago, the goal is to make sure that all of our policies are reviewed at least once every 4 years. So that's kind of the rotation that the policies are on. So one of the pieces that we started that is covered in the board memo is that for most of our policies, as we go through the cycle, we are updating them for pronoun usage and looking at those pieces as well, looking at grammatical mistakes or just other things that need to be changed with changes in legislation and century code. So those pieces are covered, and I will, the only piece that I will talk a little bit about is the removal of the midriff term that was in the dress code policy. The dress code policy was actually comprehensively revisited at the 2019 State of the Schools address. This was really brought to us through some students and parents and community stakeholder concerns that started the conversation about Fargo Public Schools dress code at that time. One of the pieces, the spirit of what started the change was really around the ownership of maybe what some would be considered distraction and the subjectivity around the term distraction because of dress codes and how that might favor one gender over another gender as well. And that really led to a pretty comprehensive process that we went through updating our policies. So we had that first year's group of superintendent student cabinet that helped us develop the policy and work with them both before and after our State of the Schools address, where we went and got feedback from teachers, administrators, parents as well through multiple principals meetings. And then we finished up with that student group as well. And then the following year, the second group of superintendent students luncheon, which are a group of high school kids that we meet with, cabinet meets with on a quarterly basis, they provided some additional feedback as well. The conversation with the term midriff and removing it in that was actually brought up in the original feedback, and it was part of one of the model or several model policies that we were looking at that time. There just wasn't, at that point, we didn't know what we didn't know, and our principals and our administrators had kind of decided, let's keep that term in the policy. Since that time, we've had multiple conversations based on just what's happening in the buildings, conversations with students, staff, and so forth as well. And it was brought up again through our administration, maybe it's time to revisit taking that out and going back to the original spirit of that policy. So that's how that policy was updated as well. I will go to just the removal of some policies as well. Almost always we're adding policies, so if there is an opportunity to remove some policies, we try to take advantage of that as well. The duties of teachers policy is solely because the duties of teachers are outlined in the negotiated agreement. It would be duplicative to have it in policy. It's also not a policy. We've done the same thing with the role of administrators. I think there was a superintendent job description too at one point. So there's some things that were maybe just pieces of information, but they're not policy. So that's why those were taken out. The piece of feedback that I believe that the board has heard on is the resolution of complaints policy, AP 5220. The reason that policy was taken away is because that policy provided a process and procedure for complaint resolutions that was directly in conflict with the same or other processes and procedures that we have for resolving things specific to the nature of what that may be at that time. So for example, when this policy was originally created, we probably did not have state or federally dictated rules around the procedure and policies that we follow for bullying, what we follow for harassment, what we follow for Title IX, what we follow for different components of employee rights that are protected. So we now have several different policies or procedures for complaint resolution and complaint submission embedded in several other policies. So from the history that is on our cabinet team, and I won't mention who those individuals are, we only know of this policy being utilized twice in the last 11 years. Both times were with the same set of facts, and that time that this policy was utilized, those same set of facts were also being utilized for one or two other processes for complaint resolution. So that, which are already embedded, whether it's a contractual grievance process or whether it's a policy on harassment or a policy on bullying. So what it did, it created basically created three different avenues of investigation and reporting and conflicting processes that we needed as well. So we we looked at whether or not this policy was necessary or not. It wasn't. Obviously, then the question or concern becomes, how do staff share concerns? What if there's a gap on something that's not covered in one of those larger buckets that I talked about? Well, the answer to that is really this policy goes against the culture that we wanted to create within our organization, which is make sure that we allow staff to talk to their supervisors directly, right? Go talk to, if there's a concern about something in the organization, follow the chain of command in the organization. And if the concern is with the supervisor, then go to the next level. We don't want to create an outside avenue to allow staff not to be able to build that sense of comfort. If we really want to protect the employees' rights and give voice to our employees, then we want them to be able to work directly with their supervisors to make sure that there is a resolution to any complaints that they have and be able to address that in that manner and in that way. I think one of the concerns that that the board may hear is, or that was shared with me as well, is that what if staff want to report a violation of policy, or they feel that something hasn't been done the right way and they keep going up to the chain of command? And I think maybe that's where there might be two different viewpoints. It would be our viewpoint as administration that the administration of policy and how to respond to the lack of enforcement of a policy is a function of administration. And that's why we have a chain of command and a hierarchy within our organization. So the staff member, the biggest priority is making sure that the rights of any employee are protected. And if their rights are infringed upon because of a policy violation, then the next level supervisor should be able to fix that. And if the next level supervisor can't fix that, then you go to the next level, all the way up to the board as well. And we are governed by policy governance, so I don't think this board should tolerate a consistent, repetitive violation of policies that's intentional on any administrator. So there's always going to be disagreements on whether or not the resolution is appropriate or not. However, at the same point, who is the person that dictates or monitors the enforcement of a policy or not should sit with the administration, because that's the structure that our organization functions under as well. So that's one of the reasons that we took away this resolution of complaint, because the only time it's been used, it was when it was used really at the same time as a grievance with the same set of facts and another policy process that we were following at the same set of facts. And it was actually used because 3 or 2 complaints were filed with the same set of facts at the same time. We took the more stringent, which at the time was the bullying process, the more thorough investigation process, and we told the complainant that this is the process that we're going to follow for resolution and do the investigation, though we received it through 2 different avenues. And then what we were being accused of doing was not following the step in one of them, and therefore you vacate the entire investigation. And that's not really focusing on the issue at hand that the employee has. So that's the problem that we're trying to solve with removing that complaint. That's a lot of words. I know there's a lot of pieces, so I will stand open to questions on that or any other policy changes that are presented today.
Nikki, go ahead.
Thank you. Just to be clear, so as you are making these changes, when are they in effect?
They're already in effect because these don't require board approval. We notify the board. They are administrative policies and functions, so we've already posted them.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Sure, thank you. I think I was on and then I turned myself off. Thank you for the explanation. I understand this is, if they're already in effect, then I am just kind of maybe saying this going forward. When I looked at the language in this policy and then compared it with some of the other complaint policies, this provided the broadest protection. I don't think there was any other language talking about an injury or inconvenience because of a violation in any of the policies. So I was just concerned that this was, even though there are other grievance procedures and avenues, this was taking away a really broad one. So I just wanted to share that publicly. I don't know that simply not using a policy is a reason for eliminating it. But I appreciate your explanation.
Dr. Gandhi?
Thank you. I think I would wholeheartedly agree with your statements. Well, on the injury one, we have WSI piece and pieces of that for staff injuries. And if there's a complaint as a result of if it's a student action, then there's student behavior reporting forms. If the injury is a result of another staff action, then there's employee conduct and things of that nature as well. I agree that this one had the biggest, broadest interpretation, and I think inconvenience is a broad term, and that is one of the reasons that we would actually propose not having that, because that's a subjective standard in terms of inconvenience, and it's not that you have been inconvenienced because of a policy violation, so it shouldn't be addressed. It's more of what is the nature of that inconvenience and what is a policy violation, how has it been addressed, and go directly to the supervisor or what the piece is. I think you made the statement that this gives the most protection, and I would say actually the removal of the policy gives us protection because it allows employees to work directly with the chain of command or for the supervisor, and if there is a policy violation that needs to be addressed in any point or any part of our system, there's going to be some policies that might be so egregious in nature that we're not going to follow the leveled steps that we have outlined, because we need to take more directive action depending on what that employee is and what that policy violation is as well. I think the difference here is just going to be as simple as operating from a deficit mindset or not, right? I think I want to create a culture within our organization where employees don't have to work to say that if it's not there in writing, then they can't address issues with their staff, because we do. And creating a policy that just says, here's a complaint about any complaint that we have, and these are the resolution steps that we do, it creates a bigger distrust, because what this policy did was allow the complainant to provide what their desired resolution is. So let's say I feel like my boss violated this policy. Well, without this policy, you go to that boss's supervisor, that boss may have the appropriate conversation or take the appropriate consequence with that employee. In the previous process, an employee says, I feel like my boss violated this policy, I'm going to fill this out, and they're going to fill out this form instead of going to that second person in chain of command. But then they also get to write, here's the remedies that I want, right? And now if the remedies that you want, that's really a managerial function, right? That's why we have a supervisor to that boss. Now, if you're not getting those remedies that you want, but it has been addressed in a different manner, you have an employee that's further disenfranchised, because they're now going to say that I went through this process and I didn't hear what I want, or I didn't get what I wanted as well. So I think the nuance here really is in terms of whose function is it to oversee the implementation of a policy for a supervisor, and at what structure do we want to create within our organization for that conversation to happen. Keeping this policy is not going to, like, we could keep this policy and no skin off my back, right? And we can keep the policy, we can even put in a policy that you can't use this policy in conjunction with something else. But then what is that message that we're sending to our administrators within our organization? What is the purpose of having even a hierarchical structure at that point? Because this policy then ultimately does come up to the board level. So if you have 4 layers of administrators that say, based on our professional expertise, this has been handled appropriately, or there was no policy violation, even though the complainant thinks so, is it then okay for the board to then get into that function of administration on that personnel management as well? So those are the pieces of the conversation. It's really just a structure that we want to have. Again, I'm probably spending a lot more time on the conversation and the explanation because of the concern that was shared, versus my personal feeling about whether or not we need to find a way to keep it if that was what we had to do. But we would never, ever have something that we thought would took away an employee's right in this organization. We want to actually empower employees to be able to speak directly and address concerns that they have.
Go ahead.
I was gonna just be quiet and listen up. Everything that you just mentioned, and you prescribe it very, very accurately, and just like Melissa mentioned too as well. My question is, before this policy was emailed to us by FEA, have you discussed this already with them before it become this big issues or thing like that? Because I feel like there is a relationship disconnection there. So if it's addressed it already, we shouldn't have to talk about it. Thank you.
Go ahead, Dr. Gandhi.
Thank you for the question. I think the irony is, I think that's one of the reasons that we would propose individuals to just pick up the phone and have that conversation too. We had an email scheduled with FEA or a meeting scheduled with FEA already around their inquiries for this. That was one of the agenda items that was stated ahead of time. But they sent the email with their feedback and their interpretation of what my actions represented prior to even coming to that meeting and asking me. So I did share that feedback with them as well. Is that part of the problem that we're trying to solve is this failure to or avoidance of just talking to an individual that's directly involved in the situation and then making a broad-based claim. So at the time that you received an email, the meeting was already scheduled to meet and go through those concerns, which did happen since then. But it was scheduled and they were aware of that at the time that they notified you.
I think it should be noted that meeting had to be rescheduled, so I think the timing was unfortunate, but I think that is an excellent question. Thank you for asking. Any other dialogue on this subject? Okay, thank you. I am seeing no hands. We move on to the next item on our agenda, the FEA report. Looks like Kim is here. Welcome, Kim.
Our conferences are in full swing, so I know middle school is tonight and elementary is coming up this week. And Dr. Gandhi and I have started our building visits. And so we've gotten to, I believe, 4 already this past week. And so we walk around and we get to meet with building reps, teachers, ESPs, and administrators, and just get to see teachers doing what they do and all the rest of the staff and all the help that they do. So it's been really good. And happy that our training is finalized for our MOU is completed. And then just to address the policy, we as FEA really believe it's necessary for this clear process to exist and that staff members can express complaints about application of policies to keep our schools positive. This policy is used to provide that clear process, and our superintendents have reviewed this several years and came to the consensus that it was working. And so I guess I feel that by removing it is not a good plan. It's my hope, as well as Dr. Gandhi's, that staff come to their administrators, but we do know that does not always happen. Sometimes people are afraid. Sometimes they just don't have the confidence of how to word what they want to have happen. And so this is a process that is helpful if it is not working out with their administrator. I hope you understand that this is a monumental change and it's deserving of your discussion and attention to that matter. So thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Next agenda item is the superintendent report. Dr. Gandhi.
No items at this time.
Great. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. I will look for a motion.
No, go ahead.
Jim?
I move adoption of the consent agenda with the addition of the HR addendum.
Okay. Okay, seconded by Namal. All in favor, please vote by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, no. Consent agenda items pass. On to the business section. There's a placeholder for a possible executive session. Jim?
Yes, I'd like to move that we go into executive session for the purpose and negotiation strategy for potential real estate purchases permitted under North Dakota Century Code 44-04-19.1, paragraph 9.
Okay, looking for a second.
Seconded.
Okay, Namal, second. We don't need a roll call vote, so all those in favor, please vote by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, no? Okay, we will go into executive session. Audience members, please give us a few minutes while we resituate ourselves. This is a executive session that is private amongst board members and administrators. We will let you know when we reemerge from the executive session.
Robin, we'll adjourn to upstairs.
Oh, we're going upstairs apparently, so you can stay here. back to this regular session of the Board of Education meeting. The next item on the agenda is board reports. So item 9A, committee liaison and correspondence reports. I think this evening, let's give Tracy the first round since she's typically the last as board president. Tracy, do you have anything to report?
Sure, thank you. Not a whole lot since we last met. Kim Rieger and I met on September 28th and had a really good meeting and discussion. I attended Davies Cabaret Night, which was a lot of fun. The past 4 days, the 7th through just now, I've been in California at the National Conference on Council of School Health and learned a lot. And I've been asked to serve on the Human Capital Officer Interview Committee, which I think we're sorting out the details a little bit on that, but those interviews start on October 17th. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Let's start with Melissa on this side of the aisle.
Sure. I don't have a whole lot. Last night, Nikki and I attended the Fargo Public Schools powwow, which was a really incredible experience, and we were invited to come down to the floor, so that was really an honor. And then I went to Ben Franklin's Law and Order Fairy Tale Unit play last Friday, which was a really, really fantastic show. And then got to watch the Spartans win the EDC cross country meet over the weekend. Yay, which was really exciting. Other than that, I've reached out to my liaison schools as sort of a month and a half in check-in, and then I'm just gearing up for committee week or committee work. We did governmental affairs last week, and then getting forward to community engagement on Friday morning, bright and early. So that's about all I have.
Very good. Thank you. Nemo.
Well, thank you. So I attended the governmental affair with Melissa, and then I also did my volunteer work as I normally do with Sauce High. They're amazing kids. They are getting to know me a little bit more. They're warming up, and they crack jokes. So it's so funny, but I love it. And then I reach out to my school liaison, Lori. So I surprised them kind of, let's just say so. And then I got sambusa again. And when I got there, they're like, oh my God, you came back, yay. So I was really, and then what she did was when I first went over there, she just walked me around because there were no children. This time around, I decided that she showed me around the kids, and I went to every classroom, and then there was a music room, and the kids were singing, and then the teacher said, hey, you two lady over there, sit down. So I sat down with the kids too as well. But and then after that, then he kind of apologized. I said, what are you apologizing for? He's like, I was talking about the kids. I was not talking about you, but I enjoyed it. And then after that, like on Monday, yesterday, I attended my first time for PTA because they invited me. So I show up for the PTA meeting. It was very interesting. Love the kids. Yeah, that's all. And then I'll be at the meeting too as well on Friday. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim, go ahead.
SEC's been immersed in a strategic planning process. We actually hired our former superintendent, Dr. Schatz, to lead it. So I've had a couple of those meetings. I think we're getting closer to maybe having a new strategic plan for the SEC. I think that's it since the last board meeting. Well, I was a visitor at GAC. Thank you for letting me crash your party.
Thank you. That's a great example of how committees need to lean on each other to do their work. So thank you for being present. Nikki, go ahead.
Thank you. Attended Davies conferences last week. Really liked that. We've now switched back from virtual to in-person, so it was all in the gym. Got to visit with several teachers, my kids' teachers and others, so that was awesome. Discovery conferences Thursday now. The one was tonight, so we're going to go Thursday. I'm looking forward to that. Yesterday was amazing. We went to the powwow for Indigenous Peoples Day, and I tried a Facebook post and it died, so I'm going to try another one again because there's not real good reception in that school. So I will try that again, but it was amazing. I stayed almost for the full thing. I left shortly after 8 and thoroughly enjoyed every minute of it. Saturday, the 8th, we had our North Dakota PTA convention, which we've renamed to the Leadership Summit. And Friday, we have the CEA meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Greg?
Yeah, I've had a quiet couple of weeks. Like other people had mentioned, I was at the government affairs meeting, CEA coming up, and I'm actually helping with a book fair on Monday. So excited about that.
Was there something to add? Go ahead.
If I may add, I wanted to say as well that at the powwow last night, our junior ROTC, anyway, they opened the event, which was really wonderful to have the presentation of the colors and to have them be a participant in it.
Absolutely.
like
Thank you for
that.
mentioning that. What I have to report is the Governmental Affairs Committee met. As mentioned, we had a very productive meeting. We are working on our legislative priorities document. This will come to the board. We're going to feed it through Governance Committee first for board approval eventually. Some of the key areas we expect to focus on are behavioral health, special education, and English learners. Of course, funding and inflation and remaining competitive, and keeping the districts whole with proposed funding bills. We are working on a information session for our elected legislators on November 17th at 7:30 a.m. There's some planning that goes into that. And of course, we can't buy them breakfast or anything. So if somebody wants to donate donuts or something yummy, you're welcome to do that individually. And then we just talked about some of the committees that we will monitor during the session. So we're gearing up, and the next committee meeting is November 1st at 7:30 a.m. With that, I also visited Longfellow and Hawthorne, and I am scheduled to go to Kennedy's PTA upcoming meeting. I also enjoy PTA meetings. You learn a lot. So that is the extent of my report. The next agenda item is just to affirm the next regular meeting date, and that is October 25th. There being no further items on the agenda, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.